Night is coming. One by one the stars appear. Night is coming. And soon it will be time for stories. Long ago, storytellers invented magical stories about the sun, moon, stars, and the other great mysteries of the sky. The stories were not meant to explain these mysteries. Rather, they were told to help people pay attention to our world. Today, scientists use another way to help us pay attention to the mysteries of the sky. By observing, measuring, and predicting, they explain how the world works. And like the storytellers of old, today's scientists can lead us to better know and care for our world. Storytellers and scientists are today's skytellers, for they both tell us about the sky. And though each tells a different kind of story, both help us to better know our world and ourselves. Night is here. Listen now. This is the time for stories.
It was a time when stars were in the sky. It was the time of giants, a long, long time ago. They told us a long time ago that the Creator had wove a blanket and placed stars in that blanket and placed it at the top of the mountain. And when the sun would go behind the mountains and the night would come, the giants reached into that blanket and they placed stars into the sky. Now, as they placed those stars up into the sky, they made pictures of animals. They made pictures of things they saw. They even made pictures of things like a Big Dipper. You see, it was the giants who put the stars into the sky. But it was also a time when there was someone watching them work. And that someone was Coyote. Oh, at the end of the day, Coyote, he would get himself into a place where he could watch those giants climb that tall mountain. As he saw them reach down and pull out a star, he would get so excited. He would say, "Look, look, look!" As a new star was raised into the sky. Now this had gone on for a long time. Those giants would work all night long. And every night they would climb that tall mountain and they would reach into that blanket and they would lift those stars into the sky. One night, those giants, as they were working and putting those stars up there, they began to say, "You know, we haven't had the night off. We come working all the time. And oh, my arm, it's hurting," one said. And the other replied, "Oh yeah, my back, it hurts." And they complained throughout the night as they worked. And soon they decided amongst themselves, "Hey, maybe we need the night off. Maybe we don't need to go to work." And between themselves, they decided not to go to work. Well, the next day, as the sun began to go behind the mountains, there was Coyote putting himself in position to watch those giants climb that mountain. And he looked, and he looked, and there were no giants. Hey, he thought, maybe those giants, maybe they need my help. And so with that, Coyote decided he was going to climb that mountain where the giants were working. He was going to go over there and see if they needed Coyote's help. And with that, he decided to go. Sure enough, there he was, climbing that tall mountain. And as he came to the top, oh, his eyes got big. Yes, there at the top of that mountain, there was a beautiful blanket. Oh, his eyes got big. Oh, that's a pretty blanket, he said. Oh, yes, he said. And after that, he said, oh, bet that blanket would look nice on my own bed. Oh, yes, he said. And at that moment, Coyote decided that blanket was going to be his. Now, as kids, we used to run around out in the mountains. We used to run out into the forests and deserts. And before we left, our grandmothers used to tell us, when you're out there, don't pick things up off the ground. If you see something on the ground, shake it out good before you put it on. Well, Coyote's grandma, she told him this too before he left that morning. So there he was at the top of that mountain. Oh, that's a pretty blanket, he said. Oh, that blanket's going to be mine, he said. And as he reached down, he grabbed that blanket and he felt something inside. He didn't know what it was. And he noticed the corners were tied on that blanket. And he began to untie the corners. And as the corners fell back, before he could see what was inside, he grabbed that blanket and he shook that blanket. And those stars that were still in there, they were thrown into the sky. And that's why today, when you look at those stars closest to us, those were the ones the giants put there. And then you look at those stars that are beyond those stars that I believe they call the Milky Way. Those are the stars Coyote shook out of his blanket a long, long time ago.
When Coyote shook out his blanket on the mountaintop and threw all the faint stars into the sky, he must have snapped the blanket in a certain way, for the faint stars did not go all over the sky. Instead, they went up in a narrow band all across the sky, and it is this narrow band of faint light that we call the Milky Way. Long ago, some people said it looked like milk, while others said it was a road or a stream or a path. Listen now. It is time for a science story about the Milky Way. In the past, everybody had one idea or another about what the Milky Way was. But around 400 years ago, something happened. The telescope was invented, and for the first time, astronomers could see that the Milky Way was made up of great bunches of stars, too many to count and too faint to see with our eyes alone. Without the telescope, our eyes can see only the glow of the countless stars that make this band of light. By and by, people realized that the Milky Way was really a great flat disk of stars, a galaxy that we live inside. But why does it look the way it does in the nighttime sky? Let's turn again to Coyote to find the answer. Remember how Coyote found the stars on the mountaintop in a beautiful blanket with the corners tied together? Coyote untied those corners, and they fell back to reveal the stars inside. Now let's imagine, before Coyote shook out that blanket, that first he spread the blanket out flat and spread the stars on it like stones, spreading them out into a flat, round pile. He spread them out to make a disk of starstones. Now let's imagine that Coyote, using his special powers, shrank himself to the size of a tiny ant. And as Coyote shrank down, he crawled in and among the disk of starstones. Imagine tiny Coyote. What does he see? When he looks down, he sees a few stones close by below him on the blanket. When he looks up, he sees a few more stones close by above his head. But when Coyote looks all around him, he sees many more stones, stones in the disk stretching away from him across the blanket. He sees most of the stones piled in a band all around him on the blanket. Now again, imagine that you are Coyote, but you're sitting on the earth on a clear night. And imagine that all of your star stones spread out in a disk are the stars of the galaxy that we live inside. Like Coyote, you see some stars close by. These are the brighter ones we use to make the star pictures called constellations. But most of the stars lie in the distance, in a band across the night sky. We see those distant stars as the Milky Way, our galaxy's great starry disk, stretching away and all around us in space. On spring evenings, the band of the Milky Way lies around the horizon, so it really looks like Coyote's disk of starstones. The horizon all around us becomes the imaginary blanket on which the flat disk of our galaxy lies. Above us, we can see some stars close by in our little part of the star disk. But to see where many of the stars are, we must look all around us on the horizon, where we can see the Milky Way, a disk of countless distant stars stretching away from us in all directions. The thickness of the Milky Way is the thickness of the star disk in which we live. Even so, the best time to see the Milky Way is in the summer, when the band stretches high across the night sky. If we could fly outside of our Milky Way galaxy, we would see that our star city looks like a beautiful, flat pinwheel of light. This pinwheel is made of billions of stars and star clusters and clouds of gas and dust, all woven together in a pattern as beautiful as the finest blanket. The pattern looks like a glittering spiral, with all of the stars and clusters and clouds of dust and gas circling around the fat center. And about 2/3 of the way out from the fat center, snuggled on the inside of a spiral arm, is where we live, on planet Earth, circling a small yellow star we call the Sun, that is just one among billions. Our Milky Way galaxy is also one among billions, billions of galaxies, large and small, scattered across the universe. What story could each one tell? It is a good time to think of such stories while our own galaxy, the Milky Way, glows in a band across the night.